I'm back from my motherland, which means I'm now free to get into episodes 7 and 8 of the Bridgerton pollen season.
It makes no damn sense. Compels me, though.
Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, and on my channel I like to talk about entertainment media. We've got the last 2 episodes of season 3 to go through, and then I will be free to finally circle back to the other Bridgerton video topics I had put on pause, as well as my usual roster of film reviews and analyses to focus on instead. How do we feel about this outfit? This is a new shirt from my motherland, and these are new trousers that actually fit me correctly because I cannot find trousers that fit me here, because I am only average size in my motherland.
He only circles white people.
So I asked viewers on my community tab to share some of the things they'd like for me to discuss from episodes 7 and 8, so I have a few of those to include in my feedback. The first one that I pulled is this one. Where do I start? It's the way I can feel the aggravation trying to claw its way out of this comment. It makes me cackle, so thank you for your feedback. Though there were a lot of follow-up comments to this, so instead of reading them all out, I'm going to include at least a few of the talking points from them in my feedback for episodes 7 and 8. Maybe not pertinent to this particular video, but I'm curious, why do you think there's such a mixed and polarized reaction to this season? Some are very pleased and seem to love it, while others think it is the worst so far. If you're one of my regular viewers, you will know that I've been regularly posting polls about Netflix's Bridgerton on my community tab as a way of gauging where viewers' opinions are at regarding various characters and plot points in the lead up to season 3, as well as the aftermath of the release of part 1 and then part 2. Obviously, I can't claim that the people who vote in my polls or comment on them are a perfectly proportionate representation of the opinions of the show's audience at large. However, what I can say is that I've observed a variety of opinions on more or less every character and every storyline. Even if there is a larger tendency for positive or negative feedback about something from season 3, there is usually at least one comment somewhere in the mix that is the opposite of that majority opinion. All that aside, I have observed among my channel viewers a large tendency from people, including pollen shippers themselves, to have a multitude of issues with the execution of the pollen love story. I would say that these issues come from a few key points depending on the viewer. There are some book readers who don't like how significant the deviation from the source material is. For example, in the book, we get to see Colin and Penelope's meet cute. The show only shared that information in a quick exposition dump.
I was assaulted by a devilishly yellow head covering.
It was not my fault. The wind blew it clean off my head.
In the book, Colin discovers that Penelope is Lady Whistledown before the carriage scene and before the proposal, whereas the show dragged that reveal out to the point of making things overly dramatic. Now, me personally, I watch Regency romances for vibes and banter, not for whatever it was that the show did with Pollen this season. I don't remember the username of the viewer who wrote this, so feel free to identify yourself in the comments if this came from you, but I got a comment on one of my Bridgerton season 3 videos saying something to the effect of, they watch Bridgerton in order to see NSFW Jane Austen, not Regency Grey's Anatomy. Essentially, the show in season 3 has become far too melodramatic, and that's simply not what a lot of Regency romance fans are wanting to see from the show. Following that talking point, I've seen the feedback from a lot of viewers that they feel like the people making the show fundamentally don't understand the romance genre and what it is that fans want to see from it. I'm assuming a lot of those people feel similarly to me in the sense that I want romantic vibes and banter. I think there can be a noticeable difference when people who are genuinely passionate about a specific genre or a story are the ones to helm a project in that genre. If any of you have been watching my channel for long enough, you will remember that I've done a lot of coverage of the rom-com Anyone But You in the lead up to its release, during the theatrical run, after the digital release. I've got video essays, and I have my interviews from the film's press junket. This is a career milestone. It's my first time ever interviewing a spy kid. Now, as a fanatic of modern literature,
don't get too trashed and I win bonus points.
Now, that film was directed by Will Gluck, who is enough of a fan of the rom-com genre that he went out of his way to include the things that you would want to see in a modern literary adaptation rom-com. He went above and beyond to include Much Ado About Nothing quotes, or even just William Shakespeare Easter eggs in general, since that was the source material for the story.
Some cupids kill with arrows, and some with traps.
That was good. I like that. That's good.
I just made it up.
He included an emotional turning point delivered by way of a song. That's textbook rom-com storytelling. And he was also very collaborative with the two lead actors so that they had the room to give feedback on their dialogue so that they could make the characters their own, and then the banter could be delivered in a way that felt easier and more natural to each of their voices as performers. Rom-com fans, or romance fans, we want to see the banter of the main couple. That's where a lot of the fun comes from, and the sparks, the passion, any and all of those things. Colin and Penelope didn't get nearly enough of that in season 3, and this brings me to a huge issue I've had with the season that I've seen echoed among a lot of the folks in my comments, is that this season had far too many subplots that did not cohesively follow the themes in the central love story, and in general they just ate up far too much screen time that should have been going to Paul and themselves. Another viewer left this comment: "The writers having too much on their plate and deciding to throw out the main entree we were all waiting for in order to cram the rest on." I think Colin in particular needed a lot more airtime and material than he ended up getting in season 3. I've said this before, but I will say it once more because I do get comments popping up whenever I publish a new Bridgerton video where the person that's commenting will say that they are watching my channel for the first time, so those people are not familiar with the many opinions I've already been sharing for months or even years by this point when it comes to Bridgerton season 3 or Bridgerton as a show in general. I was not a fan of Anthony in season 1. At his most unflattering moments, I found him to be borderline insufferable, but then in season 2, when he was the main guy, he completely won me over. So even though I was poking fun at Colin during the entire lead up to season 3, I was always open to the notion that he could win me over because that's what happened with Anthony. I don't think Colin's material did him anywhere near enough favors. Every cute Colin Penelope moment was working well for me. I cut together a montage of some of those and put that at the end of one of my season 3 videos that I was releasing in the aftermath of part 1. What we needed was more of that. Cute vibes between your main couple that can compensate for a multitude of sins in a romance plot. I had most of this video already outlined, but I recently saw The Bike Riders, something I've been clamoring to see ever since it got yanked from its original theatrical release date by a certain mega corporation. Ugh. But Focus Features showed up to save it from being doomed to either a direct-to-streaming release or just being shelved altogether for who knows how long. Anyway, even if you haven't seen that film, there's a brief excerpt of one of the film's first scenes that has been making the promotional rounds on social media. It's when Kathy and Benny meet for the first time.
Shooting the breeze?
Yeah, I guess.
There is so little dialogue between them, but there's just a lot of staring and smoldering and vibes. Their meet cute was so powerful. I was ready to just watch the whirlwind romance of them falling in love and getting married, except the movie is ultimately about a motorcycle club and its rise and demise, or at least the demise of the version of the club as it was when it was first founded. Anyway, that's not important. What is important for the sake of this video is that you need to give characters the time to just vibe with each other so that the audience will buy into their connection. But instead of focusing on cute vibes, Bridgerton season 3 opted to drag out a bunch of unpleasant melodrama and then rushed a reconciliation between Colin and Penelope right before the credits rolled for the entire season. No thank you. They were miserable at their own wedding. And sure, Simon and Daphne didn't exactly have a happy wedding either, but their wedding was earlier in the season, so they had more time afterwards to have ups and downs, including a whole lot of cute and steamy moments that many viewers enjoyed watching. And actually, since I'm making mentions of The Bike Riders, which is a film that I saw but don't currently plan on doing a full video on, it was a good film though, I do recommend it. I might as well mention that I've seen season 4 of The Boys, so this is a bonus review within a review. I got my screeners sent to me while I was back in the motherland, so obviously I was not about to watch them there because I wanted to make the most of my time while I was on my trip. But after leaving, I had some nasty jet lag that had me up late one night, so I binged season 4 in more or less one sitting. My feedback I will put to you this way. The only people I truly care about right now are Kimiko, Annie, and A-Train. I want them to get happy endings, and I'm sick and tired of people like Homelander and the Deep. All they do is be a menace, and I mean that with all the venom I can muster for fictional characters.
Demon! I will kill you as many times as I have to.
Now, thankfully, season 5 is supposed to be the final season, so we can hopefully stop dragging things out. The stakes don't feel all that high when no one in the main ensemble ever seems to die. That's something it feels like they'll be saving for season 5. At least half of these main characters can go at this point. I don't care. I picked my 3 to save. Now that list is subject to change, but for now, that is where the majority of my energy goes towards, those 3 characters. And speaking of Kimiko, this is a reminder to subscribe to my channel because when we hit 30K on my channel here, I will be putting my cat, also named Kimiko, in a new shirt, and she will show it off for you, the audience. We're going to talk a bit more about Pauline's story in episodes 7 and 8, but I want to quickly cover some of the other characters and storylines first, and I would also like to remind viewers that, as always, donation links for Palestine are in the description box. There are a variety in there, but I would also like to point you in the direction of the donation links that are for Palestinian animal shelters. The very notion of experiencing everything happening in Palestine and still going above and beyond to try to help the cats and other animals that are in need of help far surpasses anything I could properly praise to the degree that it deserves. Now, the other issue with season 3 that has significantly impacted how viewers experienced this story is the absolute dumpster fire that is the half and half release model. You gave the audience, which includes a large number of avid, active fans prone to dissecting the material in detail, an entire month to sit around and nitpick any and every issue they deemed to be less than favorable in those first 4 episodes. So that meant you built up the expectations in the audience that you will be able to fix any and every issue they had with part 1 in part 2, and if you didn't deliver, well, congratulations. You've just set yourself up to incur the wrath of an incredibly avid, active fan base. Moreover, if you were a critic who was provided with screeners for episodes 1 through 6, and then you had to wait even longer than the gap for the part 1 and part 2 release date, so longer than a month, on an incredibly overly dramatic cliffhanger with bad vibes, guess what happens when you're left to make videos with that mindset? Well, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, the biological mechanism that emerges from chronic stress leads to increased and prolonged levels of exposure to stress hormones and oxidative stress at the cellular level. Prolonged exposure to stress hormones, such as cortisol, leads to inflammatory reactions that predispose individuals to chronic disease. So if I at any point came across as agitated in my other reviews of season 3, maybe that's not just the issues with the storytelling, but the baffling choice to publicize your show by leaving some critics in a state of heightened stress.
And that's not my fault, that's science.
I'm not opposed to a stressful watch. I've brought up Saw X in passing before, but I will do it again. Plenty of traps to watch in there, but that's not the entire film, and you don't keep the audience or the critics who attend your press screenings trapped in one of those trap sequences. You show them the entire story, and the traps are part of the roller coaster of the horror genre when you throw your arms up like this and you scream. Now, that detail doesn't fix the issue I personally have, where I will continue to negatively review Regency romance if you're unnecessarily inserting melodramatic storytelling that is the total antithesis of the genre. I do not enter my Bridgerton bubble to be stressed out.
I have a very specific routine. Eye mask, headphones, build my bubble.
Oh, and apparently there were leaks happening for episodes 7 and 8 before I had even gotten around to watching those episodes, so let the record show that all those leaks did not come from me. I rest my case.
Habeas corpus.
You used none of those terms properly.
By the time I actually got around to watching episodes 7 and 8, full disclosure, I was so burnt out by the excessive stress of the story that's being piled on top of real life stress in my life that matters far more in the grand scheme of things, stress that has nothing to do with a fictional television series, that I was just no longer emotionally invested in any of the storylines the way that I was when I first began watching season 3. It had diminished significantly.
Whoops.
Whoops!
But now let's speed run through the excessive number of characters and storylines. Some of those opinions are ones I've already shared, but again, I have to repeat some of them for clarity for first-time viewers in this video's audience. The Featherington family unit, overall, I don't care. The Make and Air subplot definitely had some funny moments in part 1, but episodes 7 and 8, nope, didn't care. Didn't care about them doing a switch up and deciding to be nice to Penelope all of a sudden. She should have dropped her family, I stand by that. Cutting ties with toxic blood relatives is a good thing, actually. But Mr. Finch, I will miss you. That poorly timed sneeze was so out of pocket and hilarious. The Mondriches as characters, as in how much do I like them? Tremendously. Their storyline, 2 out of 10. I wanted those characters to stay working class, but the show is allergic to doing any real justice to the actually interesting characters who actually work for a living.
The people there actually work for a living.
I wanted them to become friends with Benedict. We only got crumbs of that.
Well, at least you have your arms. I can barely move in this.
You both look superb. And do not be intimidated.
The Ton making Will give up his club when he went through hell to build that club up in the first place. Jail! You're all going to jail. If they had stayed working class and been friends with Benedict, since Benedict could have been drinking his sorrows away in that club because he was upset about what happened with art school, he could have learned from the Mondriches how much happier life and love can be when you get away from the marriage mart. Now, I have not read Benedict's book, but from the unsolicited spoilers people keep trying to put in my comments when I don't want them there, that feels like like a somewhat cohesive way to potentially segue him into being the main character of his own season. But even with this terrible upper class storyline they gave the Mondriches, if they had let Will keep his club, just lie to these people and pretend you gave it up but keep it going on the side. Pretend that you sold it off. That would have been a fun way to stick it to these horrible, insufferable Ton people who should be minding their own business. That would have been some sort of way of showing that you can still be true to yourself and refuse to play by society's rules if those rules are in fact hot garbage.
Ah, les petits fils de pute!
Lady Danbury, not a fan of her storyline. It was really a waste of such an excellent performer. So explain to me how you didn't want to keep her as still helping out the non-Bridgerton romantic lead, this time being Penelope, of course, because you wanted to throw away the Penelope-Lady Danbury friendship that was highly beloved by so many book fans. But then Lady Danbury is still doing the same role by helping Francesca out with navigating the marriage mart. So it's literally the same thing. Then you give the fans scraps of that book friendship that they wanted to see at the last minute, as if that will fix it. Nope. And that scraps at the last minute concept happens more than once in these episodes, like what they did with Madame Delacroix and Penelope. Why did Penelope barely interact with Madame Delacroix this season when Penelope is trying to navigate whether or not she wants to keep being Lady Whistledown, how that will affect her romantic ongoings with Colin Bridgerton, when Madame Delacroix is the only person she can talk about this with since she's currently in a fight with Eloise. But sure, one small scene at the beginning of the season and one small scene at the end. Scraps at the last minute. Violet and Lord Anderson, now the vibes between them weren't bad, but I couldn't fully enjoy that storyline when it, along with the majority of the subplots, were things that I would have gladly thrown away if it had meant getting more screen time for Pollen to better flesh out their relationship. You know, the relationship that's supposed to be the main storyline of season 3. The main thing I liked from Violet and Lord Anderson's story was actually the part where Anthony was acting out and Kate was scolding him. That was the Bridgerton family banter I had been desperately craving and ultimately got far too little of in this season. But if you'd like to see a rom-com that's actually really fun to watch where the protagonist is a widow, watch The Lost City. Truly one of the best rom-coms of the 2020s.
Please mansplain sexism to me.
Oh my God, I am a woman. I can't mansplain anything.
I'm a feminist, and I think a woman can do anything a man can do.
Gregory and Hyacinth, I actually have no notes for them. They were great. They didn't eat up more screen time than it felt like they should have. They never overstayed their welcome to the detriment of Colin and Penelope's love story. And they were usually involved with some sort of entertaining Bridgerton family banter. Just fun times all around. The kids are all right. Now for Cressida, I would like to know what exactly was the point of wasting all that screen time trying to make me care about the feelings of the mean girl, which, newsflash, I still don't care. Only for you to have her go back on every single thing you were seemingly trying to develop for her. Truly pointless, waste of my time. By the way, if you haven't read the book, Cressida is not given a sob story in that book. She's a villain and she's just there to be a foil for Colin and Penelope's love story. Basically, Colin and Penelope in the book have some ups and downs, nothing too over the top, but then the big drama first comes when Colin finds out Penelope is Lady Whistledown. So they have to work through the ramifications of that, but ultimately they know that they love each other, they get married, things are seemingly good, but then Cressida shows up after they're married to try to blackmail Penelope because she had figured out that Penelope is Lady Whistledown because Penelope had written using the same specific phrase that Cressida has heard Penelope say out loud. So then it's up to Colin and Penelope to team up to figure out how to best deal with the situation. Colin makes a bunch of moves to stick up for his wife. I know. Would have been nice to see him do more of that for Penelope in the show, but that energy disappeared once he found out her secret on the show. If they had more than 8 episodes, I've said this before, I wouldn't have minded exploring Cressida. You've got a clearly capable actress playing her, but when you only have 8 episodes, no thank you. And also, the way that they had Cressida on the show figure out who Lady Whistledown was, that was terrible. Not for her, but for Eloise. If it was really that easy to figure things out, doing something as simple as going to different printing presses, aka the very thing Eloise had been doing, you mean to tell me that Eloise's intelligence and determination is just no longer canon? You want to undermine Eloise's efforts to find out who Lady Whistledown is, just to service a Cressida storyline that you're ultimately going to toss in the bin at the end of the season, instead of letting Cressida's airtime go to Colin and Penelope when it's their season. It's just very weird. The math is not mathing.
$7 million.
No. Not 36K per person. 36 total.
Eloise, I don't really have much to say about her because you retconned her "I would rather die" statement to make her friends with Cressida.
Perhaps now you might stop spending time with insipid wallflowers all evening.
and refine your circle of friends. I may have known.
I would rather die.
Which makes no sense when you could have been showing more exploration of her relationship with other Bridgertons, further depriving us of that Bridgerton family banter a fair few viewers have wanted to see. And then you recycled the same fight Eloise had with Penelope to do that exact same fight with Cressida. Why?
Get out of my class.
Oh, and the Eloise Benedict scene on the swings, yet another example of that problem this season has of throwing in scraps at the last minute of things that the viewers want to see.
Thank you.
Next, I actually want to quickly mention Daphne. Now, I know she wasn't in season 3, but she was in book 4. And I actually really wish we could have had that scene because it was a really emotionally meaningful scene. It gave me more of that Bridgerton family relationship dynamic that I did not get enough of in season 3. And if they had gotten Phoebe back, that would have been a perfect example of how to meaningfully include former leads without having them take up too much time away from the two leads interacting with each other. Cantony were cute when they were around, but it often felt like they were only barely scratching the surface of what they could have done with them character-wise. Having said that, though, the part in the last 2 episodes where Anthony was telling Kate that he wants their baby to know their Indian heritage and culture, that was the only part of these last 2 episodes where I got very emotional in a good way. I shed a tear. It was very chic. I had a single tear running down my cheek. That was the sort of thing I wanted to also see for Pollen. Just really romantic, lovey-dovey, mushy declarations to each other.
Bit of foreplay, you know, twinkle in the eye, the deed, you know, pregnancy.
Now, as for Benedict, as a Benedict girly for the first 2 seasons, as someone who made a video essay about Benedict that was over an hour and a half long, hyping him up, I'm appalled by how this season threw away anything and everything that made some of us fall in love with him in the first place. So let me quickly go through the list. Benedict, up until this point, has been shown to be a romantic.
What about honor? Romance?
What is it truly to admire a woman? To look at her and feel inspiration? To delight in her beauty, so much so that all your defenses crumble, that you would willingly take on any pain, any burden for her. To honor her being with your deeds and words.
You seem to have the melancholy of heartbreak about you.
What would you know about heartbreak?
I would not, really. But I have felt it in paintings, in a Gainsborough portrait or a Turner sky.
But somehow, in season 3, he only cares about having a casual fling. No thank you, throw it in the bin.
Allez, petit fils de pute!
Benedict is the one in his family doing emotional labor for everyone, but somehow that was nowhere to be seen in season 3.
Very well.
See that he is quite well.
Me? I'm not in need of coddling.
They look like a prize calf trussed up for auction.
Even Daphne felt most apprehensive at her first official ball, and look how well her season turned out.
Right.
Come, sister. The cakes at these occasions are surprisingly good. Have you found a wife yet? Or are you planning to offend every young girl until there are none left?
I shall certainly not let some sister, especially one younger than me, keep me from getting what it is I want. Who you want, you mean?
Tell me, Mr. Mondrich. I wouldn't mind some stimulation. I must say, Mr. Mondrich, I'm quite overjoyed to see what a fine establishment you've built by the sweat of your own honest labour.
Brother, I need you.
I'm in the midst of a conversation.
Outside, straight away.
Questions that seem to linger, no matter how far you go to escape them.
Are you quite well, brother?
If one must participate in it, why not do it in the fresh air?
For how long have you cared about flower arranging?
I'm an open-minded woman. I can care about many things.
You work as a model as a way of learning from the lectures. Ingenious.
Has anyone seen Anthony? Benedict, see that he is well. I'm sure the emotions of the day have somewhat confused him.
Perhaps we should allow Anthony a little respite. Brother, is that what you need?
How long do you plan on punishing yourself for and wallowing in such misery?
Forget I came. Have a good night, Benedict.
Look, no, things may seem bleak now, brother. But if I'm learning anything from my art studies, it's that it is almost always a matter of perspective. I look at my art, and if I do not like what I see, I may always alter the colour palette, but I certainly do not toss the entire design aside. Perhaps you two could do the same in your own life.
What happened? My valet saw you carrying Miss Sharma inside. Is she all right?
I didn't.
Are you all right?
Would you like a companion?
What? Of course I would not.
Because I'm apparently free? Imposter party of two?
Perhaps because you sense the truth, which is that I'm simply not good enough.
Oh, Benedict, stop. You're beginning to sound like me. If you want to paint, paint. It is one of your many talents. Chief among them, your natural gift for seeing what others need, even when they cannot see it themselves. It is a gift it has taken me far too long to recognize, but I would not have done if it were not for you.
We got crumbs at the last minute where he was giving John Sterling a pep talk, and finally I felt like I saw the Benedict I fell in love with in seasons 1 and 2, but by that point it very much felt too little too late. I have zero complaints about making him bi, but you didn't even do that reveal well. If you wanted him to be bi, why didn't you make his main romantic relationship of this season a man? You threw that in last minute out of nowhere, and you want the credit for being inclusive. If you really want him to realize he's bi, how about you give him time and space to discover that? You have him make a new friend, a man, and he's surprised to find that he's interested in them beyond just platonic feelings, and he can come to learn that for him as a person, he can find happiness with women or men. I've seen a fair few people in my comments complaining about what they felt to be the incessant amount of hookup scenes for Benedict, and I think this further shows how the people watching Bridgerton are not looking for NSFW content simply for the sake of it. When people were demanding more salacious scenes for Kate and Anthony in season 2 than what was presented, those feelings were intensified because of how emotionally invested those viewers were in the romantic tension and buildup Kate and Anthony had in their relationship. And then you had Lady Tilly say that she has caught feelings for Benedict out of nowhere. There was no effective buildup to that reveal. A fundamental rule of storytelling, especially on film, is show, don't tell. Next up, Francesca. I know that the reveal of a gender-bent endgame love interest has set the internet discourse ablaze, but I actually don't have that many things to say about this just yet, at least compared to the level of conversation that it seems to be generating online. The first thing I want to say is that just because gender bending or race bending characters can provoke the uglier, bigoted sides of people in the audience, that's not a good enough reason to refuse to ever do it. If you spend your life tiptoeing around the feelings of bigots and fascists just to try to placate them, that never ends well. Having said that, I sincerely hope that the actress Masali is being cared for and looked after and supported. I haven't made as many mentions of Marina in my season 3 coverage because Ruby Barker has been so forthcoming about feeling like she wasn't supported by the show Bridgerton when dealing with a lot of racist, misogynistic hate from being on the show. And Regé-Jean Page has apparently made similar mentions or subtextual posting on social media. I'm not as familiar with that, but I've seen it discussed a bit online. I didn't want to bring unwanted attention to anyone that might need the space to heal and find peace from a negative situation. When I emphasize the importance of supporting workers in show business for things like fair wages and residuals and also humane working conditions, this is something I'm also including under that umbrella. Issue statements supporting the performers experiencing bigotry from certain parts of the masses. Pay for any physical and mental health care that this performer might need as a result of experiencing this sort of hateful backlash. Now, as for any ramifications of this gender bend on the storytelling, at the time of recording this video, I have only read Bridgerton books 1, 2, and 4. Up until this point, I've made a point of not reading Bridgerton books until after I watched the season, and the reason I was adamant about doing things this way is because season 2 was when I first started properly watching and covering Bridgerton. I had asked for press screeners for season 2 ahead of its release. I got them and I binged season 1 right before binging season 2 in order to make my review. And being able to experience that story without knowing what was in the source material beforehand ended up being so much fun. Watching the B scene with no idea it was coming was incredible. But now that season 3 has missed so many marks, I'm not as confident moving forward that I'm going to enjoy upcoming seasons of Bridgerton anywhere near as much as I did season 2. Not because I find those couples to be bad, but because of the storytelling choices that are being made by the higher ups. Considering how it seems like maybe gender-bending Michael to Michaela has the potential to significantly shift the book story in the adaptation process, I'm going to pose a question to you, the viewers. Would anyone like for me to read Francesca's book and do a video on it as it pertains to adaptation? Because I don't really want to rush to read the other books just yet, but given that this is a larger change, I might be open to doing that if viewers are going to tune in. Also, I did a poll a while back on my community tab asking viewers to rank the books from most favorite to least favorite, and a lot of people had put Francesca's book in their top 3. That was actually the reason why I ended up being surprised when they did the Michaela reveal, because I was vaguely aware, without any major plot spoilers, that a lot of people seem to really like this Michael-Francesca story. And then on that same poll, a lot of people seem to have opinions, sometimes unfavorable ones, about Eloise's story. So if you had asked me which story would I predict a gender bend on, I would have guessed Eloise. Plenty of people have shared a belief or inclination towards thinking that Benedict or Eloise or both are not straight before season 3, and so that's where my guess would have gone to. Now again, to reiterate, I'm not inherently opposed to gender bending Michael because I haven't read that book. It just wouldn't have been my first guess. So not an opposition, just ooh, I'm surprised. So again, I personally don't mind them gender bending because there's no reason for me to oppose something I've not read yet.
I just want to let all the lesbians out there know, if I can make it to the top 10, so can you. Big up to Brooklyn, yo!
Now let me talk about some of the other talking points for Colin and Penelope in episodes 7 and 8 that were brought up by some viewers.
That's very nice. Nice penmanship.
Do I think Penelope should have been solo while making her speech? Even if she was going to make the speech herself without Colin saying anything, I would have liked for him to perhaps stand by her side, maybe hold her hand. That is your wife. How about you support her?
I'm gonna shield you. Maybe I
You
can
are
shield
not shielding me. No, I should be shielding
Why?
you.
Because I'm a woman that's supremely sexist.
They also really didn't do enough to develop or explain Colin as a writer in the show. I've seen some negative reactions to Colin saying that he was jealous on the show, but I actually didn't mind him saying that as much in the book because it just made more sense the way they explained it and fleshed that out. Because you got a deeper understanding of Colin's struggles as a writer, of trying to find that confidence in his voice as a writer. And jealousy doesn't have to be the worst trait as long as you don't take it too far and you can have a compelling arc of character growth. Colin could have had that internal reflection and realization. If you're demonstrating self-awareness of your character flaws and willing to work on them, what's wrong with that? Another viewer commented, Colin's storyline became merely about Penelope and there was a lack of his own character development which could be shown on screen rather than in the background. He felt more like a caricature for Pen and not an individual character on his own season. I just think that the writers don't know how to write a male character who can be an individual too, but also support his wife. Rather than adding so many useless scenes of Benedict, they could have developed more of Colin's character or storyline, and also on Pauline's relationship. Like, I also wanted a scene where I wanted to see the society's reaction to their relationship, or the fact that they are getting married. Because Colin was seen as a heartthrob by the ladies of the town, and then he was getting married to a wallflower. I would agree on a fair bit of this. Colin's material this season was significantly lacking compared to how much they gave to Penelope, and I wanted to learn more about him since this was his turn to be the main guy. Simon had to deal with the lingering trauma from having a father that wouldn't accept him because of his stutter. Anthony had to deal with the trauma of losing his father and seeing how devastating that loss was on his mother. Both of these things were impacting their ability to let go and let love fully in. Now, Colin, he's got a different vibe going on, so I doubt that you would have used the father trauma in the same way again, but ideally you would want something of his that would further inform how he connects or doesn't connect with Penelope. Something for him to work through or overcome so that he could finally fully connect with her. And if they had done the Lady Whistledown reveal sooner for Colin specifically, him having to work through that with Penelope instead of just sulking and sleeping on the couch after they're married, I think I would have enjoyed watching that far more. Imagine that, letting Colin and Penelope talk to each other in their own season. Also, give them more time to talk about the jealousy, talk about writing together, and talk about creating and self-expression. And the final comment I will mention from viewers: did the conclusions to the plot in the final episodes help ease some of the frustrations you had in the earlier parts of the season, or did you feel like the ends did not justify the means? Dear viewer, the ends absolutely did not justify the means. None of the earlier issues I had from episodes 1 through 6 were effectively fixed in 7 and 8. There was not enough screen time for Pauline, not enough conversations or cute lovey-dovey moments. None of the subplots were compelling enough to warrant taking up as much screen time and taking it away from Pauline as much as they did. All the good story ideas that I had wanted to see that had scraps of being finally present in episodes 7 and 8, that just wasn't enough. And if it's a Pauline season, I would like to see more of Pauline being cute and in love.
You do not. Why are you leaving so soon? Especially in such a charming dress.
Do not mock me, please.
Mock you?
I assure you I'm quite serious. The colour rather suits you. Do you not need a chaperone?
Spinsters do not need chaperones.
You are not a spinster. If you are going to make me say it out loud, I miss you. I seek you out at every social assembly because I know you will lift my spirits and make me see the world in ways I could not have imagined. You are clever and warm and... I was riding my horse, minding my own business, when I was assaulted by a devilishly yellow head covering.
It was not my fault. The wind blew it clean off my head.
Oh, wind or not, you certainly seemed pleased when I landed in the mud.
I apologise. And the rest of your family?
They're playing cards in the garden.
Yet somehow they shine even brighter when you are kind. I might say something like that if you were a suitor.
Well, that was rather direct.
Your writing is very good.
Lord Basilio.
Lord Basilio is a Viscount.
And you are Penelope Featherington. Do not forget that. You are joking.
I am not. Colin!
Forgive me. I did not know. Surely someone here is not in mourning? We shall gallop along.
Colin!
I think Penelope is quite fortunate to have you as a friend.
Yes. She is, well, a very good acquaintance of families, of course. And I apologise for not coming to see you earlier.
Oh, it is for the better that you did not.
Is it?
Isn't it?
And I apologise
No,
for the...
I apologise for asking.
I do not apologise.
You apologise?
Yes, but I... Yes.
Do I have sugar on my face?
No. You removed it.
Are you well?
There is a question I have been needing to ask you.
Our instincts. The innate animal impulse that is inside even the most sophisticated of us. For when all is said and done,
Colin,
our nature will always win out.
You cannot marry that man. He will leave you, and he is too particular, and he is just not right for you, Ben.
I'd very much like to be more than friends.
You gotta put your fingers in the holes.